It's a beautiful morning, Nigeria. Welcome to Daybreak here on Trust Television, reaching you from the nation's capital in Abuja. My name is Ayuba Ilya.
And I am Zainab Bala. Good morning to you wherever you are and happy holiday. The Daybreak Show brings you latest updates every morning on weekdays.
And if you're just joining for the first time, this is a show you want to watch every morning to keep you informed. Now on Daybreak today, the Executive Director, Strategic Empowerment and Mediation Agency, Sami Ihejirika, joins us to discuss new approaches to conflict resolution in the wake of new security threats in the country.
For now, let's take a look at the events of 19th of October in world history. That there you have it. Is today in history, and today is World Pediatric and Born Day. I've not heard of that before.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of such days, that we commemorate. But I'm sure that medical practitioners will appreciate the day more. They will understand the day more. But for us in Nigeria, more significantly, today is the birthday of the former head of state Yakubu Gowon. He marks his 86th birthday. Yakubu Gowon, also known as Jack Gowon, was born on October 19, 1934 in Pangshin Plateau State, Nigeria. He was the Nigerian military head of state. He served between 1966 to 1975. In a final attempt to resolve ethnic tension on May 27, 1967, Gowon declared a state of emergency and divided Nigeria's 4 regions into 12 states. 3 days later, the eastern region declared itself the independent state of Biafra with Odumegu Ojukwu as its leader. Armed conflict began in July. There you have it. I mean, you cannot talk about the history of Nigeria without mentioning the role of the former head of state, Yakubu Gowon.
Indeed.
On a day like this, we want to wish him happy birthday. And we want to celebrate him for the efforts he made in, making Nigeria to remain together and united. You remember the NYSC, I mean, for most of us, as far as you went to a Nigerian university, you must have. In fact, even if you went to a foreign university, you must have served, doing your NYSC, and that brings Nigerians, young people from different parts of the country together. So that's a major force of uniting the country. And so we celebrate him today. Happy birthday to the former head of state, Yakubu Gowon. Now, on 19 October 2006 as well, state of emergency in Ekiti, Plateau and Anambra was declared by Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo at the time. Now, the emergency rule on southwestern Ekiti State, Plateau State in north central, and Anambra State in the southeast was over impeachment of governors. The emergency rule was imposed during the administration of Ayo Fayose, Joshua Darie, and Peter Obi. Those were days that, some kind of ethnic and religious tension in different parts of the country, and the former president felt, well, let's just declare a state of emergency. And I think it did calm the tension in, some parts of the country. Some people may say, well, it's political, but yes, again, it's political, and that's why the issues were there at the time, the tension and all of that.
Right.
And so we hope that we'll continue to learn from these experiences in our past. For now, let's take a look at the dailies on Daybreak. What are the stories that made the headlines? That will be shortly after this break. Please stay with us.
When the situation situation where you find that they look like the same.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that.
Welcome back. If you are just joining us, this is Daybreak on Trust Television. Now let's take a look at our dailies on Daybreak this morning, starting with the lead newspaper, which is the Daily Trust newspaper. Right at the top on page 7, you'd find criminals conniving with monarchs in Bauchi. That's according to a governor. And the headline there states how bandits killed dozens in Sokoto market. And the rider is saying governor says 43 die, blames attacks on Zamfara operation. Another rider is saying different bandits groups mobilized to launch attack. Security challenge surmountable, that's according to Sultan. And you'd also find troops gunned down 10 bandits in Kaduna. And on page 4, you'd see APC Congresses, implosion looms as losers fight back. Aregbesol's camp goes to court. We are authentic, not parallel, that's according to Sheikho's faction. Reconciliation panel appeals to aggrieved members. You'd also find Nigeria records 33 new COVID-19 deaths. These are some of the stories on the Daily Trust.
Really very, very sad events that we are seeing that the death toll in that attack is rising to 43. For how long? That's the question that, one will want to ask. For how long? Just for how long are we going to have to go through this? Seeing the numbers of people killed almost on a daily basis, and when you talk about what's the response to that, mostly you just see statements condemning attacks and all of that. Then what next? Nigerians need to feel more secure. Nigerians need to, see their security forces work more for them. Yes, there quite a lot of effort is being put in place, as far as the fight against insurgency and banditry and the rest of them. But we need to see more. The safety of people needs to be guaranteed. I think that's the only thing that we can say, as far as this story is concerned. Let's take a look at the next story here. The Nigerian Tribune is next, and we are seeing some of the stories here, like the one on page 6 saying cement prices rise in Southwest. You'd also find fully vaccinated Powell, former U.S. Secretary of State, dies from COVID complications. You'd also find Oloruyomi, Fashola, Mongunu, Irabo, Kyari, headline editors conference on security. Also, you'd find also below the nameplate there, 13 years after Fiditi gets new king. Also, Lagos, #EndSARS panel, sitting ends as more than 20 victims compensated. That's on page 26. Twitter recommendations to affect other social media platforms. That's according to the federal government, the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, there saying. The lead story on the Nigerian Tribune, Buhari says insecurity declining, 30 feared killed in Sokoto market. And rather, FG takes delivery of final batch of Tucano jets. That's on page 8. So much ado about these Tucano jets. Really, I hope that by the time that we get delivery, we receive the complete delivery, right, we'll see a turn of events in the fight against insecurity. The writer there says FG takes that's the last story there too. And then aggrieved APC members adamant. That's on page 22. The writer says take party to court in Oshun. Okorocha spits fire. Party fixes Saturday for aborted Congress in Oyo. Nigeria, World Bank to raise $30 million for vaccine plant. That's according to the Vice President, Yemi Osinbajo. That's that on the Nigerian Tribune this morning.
Okay, let's take a look at some of the stories on the Nation newspaper this morning. You'd find on page 29, police no to end SARS protest in Lagos, anxiety over clash of groups. And you find on page 6, Maulud Nabi, President Sultan Governors Khan greet Muslims. Today is a public holiday because it's Maulud Nabi, the birth of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And you would find on page 30, Buhari eulogizes ex-US icon Powell, 1937 to 2021, top media chiefs for Guild of Editors Conference. And you'd also find the big headline there saying Kanu slammed with more treason charges. And the writer is saying Southeast governors, Igbo leaders ready for dialogue with federal government on separatist group leader. And you'd also find insecurity, others, U.S. joins forces with Nigeria. We are pushing back insecurity, says Buhari. 6 more Super Tucano jets in. That's the story you just read earlier on.
Yeah. On the big picture there, you would see the pictures of the Super Tucano jets, on the Nation there, newspapers. But, while you say that we are pushing back on insecurity, the ordinary Nigerian may say, well, we just had an attack that killed 43 people in Sokoto State.
Been done,
so
in that regard.
Exactly. So we need to see a decline in the number of such attacks. We need to stop experiencing these abductions here and there, abduct, release, just like we saw yesterday. Some students from the Nasarawa State University, abducted and all of that. So there has to be a change of narrative. The next story that we'll be looking at on the Punch newspaper, the first one at the very top, says Nigeria producing $18 billion cassava missing in global markets. That's according to the federal government. You'd find that on page 19. And then less than 4% of Nigerians will be vaccinated by 2021, according to the vice president on page 9. FG budgets 104 billion naira to maintain purchase generators in 2022. You would find the writer there saying Finance Ministry takes lion's share, votes 82 billion naira for generators. Well, I don't know what to say about this, because even government cannot even supply electricity for itself. So where are we really as far as the issue of power generation and power supply is concerned? The lead story on the Nation, on the Punch newspaper, APC convention on the threat. Aggrieved party members cite ruling against Buni. The riders there, Buni's panel not recognized by law. Activities will be illegal. That's according to Ekiti Group. We informed National Secretariat about our Congress, says Lagos for Lagos. Okay. Keamos Group heads for appeal court against Omo Agege's faction. You'd see also robbers crash, kill UI students, colleagues call for prayers. 918 health centers shut as cholera cases soar. It's dangerous linking your SIM to another subscriber's NIN. The NCC is warning. You'd find that on page 20. For those who are fond of doing that, I think it's time to take caution. Imagine you are linking your SIM to somebody's NIN, and then the person goes ahead to commit one form of crime or the other. It bounces back to you.
That's terrible. Why would you even do that in the first place?
Nigerians always try to be smart. Some will try to monetize it, really. For them not to go through the whole process of getting, the NIN thing. It's stressful and all of that. So they rather just go pick up a SIM card, use another person's NIN to register.
That's terrible, if you'd say.
And some people are making money. You'll be surprised. Some people are making money out of this, by doing this, because people want to avoid the process of doing the NIN registration because of the stress and all of that. So you just go somewhere, you pay, and then you get your SIM
I think
registered.
the government should do something about this, since we're already having a tip-off of this kind of activities.
Yeah, exactly. All right, at the very bottom on the Punch newspaper, you'd find, many traders killed as gunmen open fire on Sokoto market. Masked gunmen killed LASG director, steal phone files. You would also see Idil Maulud report declining insecurity. Buhari tells media, Lawan governors preach peace. All right, so the media is being urged by the president to report stories of the declining cases of insecurity. Well, as it is,
If we see that, we'll report that.
definitely. If it is about decline, if the report is there, we'll definitely report it. I think that's what the media is out to do. All right, that's that on the Punch newspaper this morning.
Okay, let's take a final paper, looking at The Guardian. You'd find on page 19, 35 years after, stakeholders want Dele Giwa immortalized. And you'd find on page 3, UN delists civilian JTF from armed groups recruiting kids. And you'd also find on page 3, finally, government scraps DPR, PPPRA, PEF for new agencies. You'd also see on page 20, tributes as former U.S. Secretary of State dies of COVID-19. Sad, isn't it? I've been seeing quite a lot of tributes going on in international media. And the headline there says, Aregbesol's camp drags Buni others to court over APC Congress. And the writer is saying, I'll respond to your false allegations in due time. That's according to Lai Mohammed telling Kwara government. Stakeholders finger a motion in cracks in Oyo APC, other states. You'd also see Ozodinma conducted birthday party, not Congress, says Okorocha. Sounds
That's funny. Really hilarious.
Okay, another writer is saying PDP secretaryship consensus threatens as more aspirants emerge from Southwest. And you'd also find security alert. Delta faults inclusion in UK's travel advisory to 12 states. 2 British nationals rearranged an alleged $9.6 billion PNID contract scam. These are some of the stories on The Guardian newspaper this morning.
Yeah, very interesting, really, about some of these stories. Aregbesola drags Buni others to court. Yes, we are now saying the friction in the political parties, like yesterday, our reviewer highlighted yesterday about the conflicts that we're seeing towards the 2023 election. That just shows you the quality of, individuals that we have, in our political parties, unable to settle frictions within the party, without necessarily escalating and going to courts and all of that. People say, well, politics is all about interest. Yes, it's all about interest, but at what point will national interest, or I'll say the common interest, take over?
Right.
At what point will individual interest step aside for the common good? I think we need to define that. That's very, very important. If we don't have quality internal democracy in our political parties, then there's just no way we can have good leaders, people who are selfless and all of that. So I hope that our political parties will begin to look at internal mechanisms of settling conflicts, and all of that. All right, then other stories of interest, on these newspapers that we're looking at. Finally, government scraps DPR, PPRA, PEF for new agencies. Recall that the Petroleum Industry Act passed, will see the, I would say, scrapping of some of these agencies and the creation of new ones. But again, there are reports like we saw yesterday that are suggesting some kind of merger, for some government institutions, so that the cost of running governance will be drastically reduced. We hope that that report will be looked into. Yesterday, the Daily Trust led with that story. In case you missed that, you can check it out. So it's very important that we do that, so that instead of borrowing and continually borrowing, we need to find a way of generating resources without necessarily going all the way to borrow and all of that. Well, that's that. We will now take a short break. We've looked at the stories that are making the headlines this morning. We'll go on a quick break now, and then when we come back, we'll be joined by our guest in the studio to have more discussions. Join us again.
This is the spot marking signifying the starting point of the dam. No Chomri, no Sare, 40. No compensation has been given to any community member, and no place has been earmarked for their relocation.
Since why they go, they never come back.
And this is where the hydroelectric power dam is supposed to be constructed. But for many years, the story has remained the same. This is the site of the proposed hydroelectric power station in Mambila. But the irony is, no construction has even commenced yet.
African fabric is finding its way to the global stage. But Nigeria is losing out on big textile spenders as the local industry faces imminent extinction.
Behind me is the Arewa Textile Mill, established in 1963 and eventually closed down in 2004.
From over 180 textile mills in the 70s, only about 25 mills now operate at less than 40% capacity.
I'm an employee of Arewa Textile PLC before it closed. After a month, I was just like a madman.
In a day, a load of 4,500.
The once thriving sector struggles to compete with an annual import of $4 billion.
Smuggling is the order of the day.
For manufacturers, we cannot compete.
We visit the nation's textile hubs to seek answers to why the sector has failed to return to its glory days despite government's intervention.
Get latest updates on current topical issues and breaking news by downloading the Trust TV mobile app on your Android devices. Go online, click Google Play Store, search Trust TV, install the app, and get doses of unfiltered information on happenings all over the world in your pocket. Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
Nice to see you, sir. You got a 10-year-old son, a 12-year-old son. He's a shill boy. Yeah. And how did he get to that stage? You allowed it to happen. You allowed it to fester. It's like a cancer.
It's a failure of the family, a failure of the society, and a failure of governance.
We we are still going into some other hideouts to see if any apprehensions will be made tonight.
Operate within the context of the law with much respect to human rights.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for staying with us. And if you're just joining, you're watching Daybreak on Trust Television. And we have in the studio Sami Ihejirika, Executive Director, Strategic Empowerment and Mediation Agency, SEMA. He will be talking to us about new conflict resolution mechanisms in Nigeria. Now, some will say Nigeria is on the precipice. Some will say Nigeria is on the edge or verge of collapse because of the recent rhetorics about national unity and cohesion. We have agitations in different parts of the country. We have national conversations that seem to have some tone of ethnic, division and all of that. How is Nigeria to respond to all of these things to remain united, stronger and together? And that's what we'll be talking about on the show this morning. Thank you for joining us. Good morning.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
And thank you for having me.
Now, as an expert of conflict resolution, every day we see these stories on our newspapers, in our televisions, in our radio. We hear about the rhetorics and how politicians sometimes make certain remarks and all of that. How are we handling agitations and conflict situations in Nigeria?
Well, first of all, I think that we need to recognize that everybody has some need, and that behind every conflict there are unsatisfied needs. But most of the time here, we wait until things go so bad, before we begin to, engage in that kind of fire brigade approach in solving the problems. But peace building or conflict resolution is a deliberate thing. It's a proactive exercise. You don't just have to wait until things get so bad before you begin to address them. There are what we call early warning signs. We see this in the family, we see it in our relationships, that things are not exactly how they should be, So it's at that point in time that we need to begin to address the issues, But for us here, we leave things to go so bad. People begin to hate each other. People begin to kill each other. Then before we know it, it's serious. And then before we begin to think of how to intervene, by then things have gone so bad. So we need to be very deliberate about this. We need to be very deliberate about it. We have to be proactive and begin to deal with issues as soon as we see the early warning signs. First and foremost, communication is very important. If there's a breakdown in communication, and you begin to see signs of a breakdown in communication, I think that's the point at which you intervene and make sure you restore communication. Because without communication, you cannot build relationships. So relationships are about communication. So we see a situation where Nigerians wait until what we call ambush management. We do ambush management. You wait and see, you just, they ambush, and see who will go wrong, and then you do something. But that shouldn't be the case. Everybody has some pressing need, which we must all address. Because if you satisfy your need and mine is not satisfied, I'm going to be restless. And if I'm restless, you are not going to be comfortable. So I think we need to change our psyche, our mindset in terms of how we approach problems. How did we get here, in your opinion? How did Nigeria get to this point? Some said we've never seen it this bad. Yes.
In our history, in our national journey, or I would say our national unity and all of that. How did we get here?
Well, I think it's all a question of greed, that Some people want to have everything to themselves, because there's that opportunity to do that. And more especially to the law, that is the judiciary, those who enforce the law. People don't obey laws in Nigeria. Nobody. Beginning from the top to the bottom. And these things are, what do I call it? They are infectious. Once a leader is not respecting the law, the tendency that those following will not respect the law. So when we don't respect the law, and the judiciary itself is not helping matters and standing firm, we hear about corruption in the judiciary and all that, except we can enforce the law and make sure that whoever goes wrong, whether it's your brother, your mother, or whoever, that he faces the wrath of the law.
Right.
So, but we're so, dancing around it because of wealth, because of money. So I think we need a kind of orientation. The political arena, the political space is, fraught with all kinds of, quest for money. Everybody's struggling to be in charge because you need to control the money, which is not the real thing, because common good is something everybody should be working for. We should all work for common good. But since the advent of politics in Nigeria, that is this nascent political drama, what they call it, democracy, things have gone so bad. One, the business looks so lucrative, very lucrative. It's a lucrative business. If you can get your way into the place, you're made. So everybody's fighting like hell, to get in there. So we need to, really do some kind of reorientation.
Okay.
For everybody, leaders, followers, because if we don't do that, the mindset we have now is a very dangerous mindset.
Right.
That winner takes all, yeah.
Okay. Now, we all know that the government is supposed to look out for its people.
Yes.
But many would say it shouldn't be their responsibility alone.
Yes.
Are there other who is responsible, to ensure that peace, is created, that arena of peace and harmony is created?
Everybody has a responsibility to look after each other, right from the home, First and foremost, I must talk about the family. I don't think parents are doing very well. The families are not doing well because if you see a miscreant in the street or a greedy politician, it must have come from a home. So I think that first and foremost, our democracy should begin at home. If we learn to keep peace at home, if we like to be democratic at home, if we learn to be, cooperating at home, if there is love at home, then we can take it out to the bigger society. So I think that's where we need to, begin to look at first of all. Then we go into the main arena. Many people are not educated. Our educational system is very poor. Let's face it, not much is going on there. If we have to compete in peacemaking, or want to compete in economy, or whatever it is, or want to be in the 21st or 22nd century, education is the foundation. So peacemaking is not just an all-commerce thing. It's a skill. And that skill can be acquired over time by emulation. We see those who are capable of doing it and we emulate them, or we teach it. But there has to be some level of orientation. And moreover, we don't put in money into peacemaking, into resolving issues. We don't put in money there. Government doesn't put in money.
Right.
The civil society groups who are working find their own money. They go to the international donors, and ask for money. And at some point, there will be fatigue. Those who are giving you money will be tired of giving you money, particularly when they don't see any good result coming out of the investment, So we need to change all that narrative and see how we can have local resources where those who are willing, to work for peace can buy into that system and be able to, get something done.
Okay. Now, some will say, well, an angry man, a hungry man is an angry man.
Yes.
And if you look at the level of poverty in the country, some data, have shown how that Nigeria is poverty capital of the world and all of that, those kind of data. We've seen them. How would you reconcile these two? How is it possible for Nigeria to achieve peace, in this atmosphere of, high rate of unemployment, high rate of poverty in the land, high rate of, out of school children, people who are largely illiterate, and all of that. How is it possible to achieve peace in looking at these social problems?
First and foremost, I think that education is very important. I said that earlier on, because you must get people prepared, to engage in profitable ventures, have the idea, have the knowledge, have the skill on how to do it and get things done. So if you don't have lots of people who are educated and who are capable of, reflective thinking, they can take care of their situation. They can, easily make adjustments in their life and know how to adapt and get things done. That is one. Then secondly, you don't, there's a correlation between economy and violence. When people are poor, the tendency that they resort to self-help, do all kinds of things to, make ends meet. So I see the government here running some programs, which I call all kinds of little programs, which I call palliative programs, dashing people money, which is not sustainable. And then hiring young people for jobs, for 3 months, 1 month, sometimes, and they don't get paid. It doesn't work that way. Those little things they don't create wealth. Wealth creation has to be a very deliberate economic plan. For example, we have lots of moribund industries around the country, textile industries, all kinds of industries that are all shut down. None is functioning. But I tell you, for example, if you resuscitate the textile companies in Kaduna, you can imagine the number of people who will be employed in that arena. And when you employ people, there's a multiplier effect. When you earn salary, there are people who are dependent on you, there are people who make supplies to that industry, and so on and so forth. So it's not a question of dashing people money and you think you can leave them out of poverty. You cannot. So you must have to create an economic base, an industrial base, because that is how you can build a nation.
Well, economic experts are suggesting that we could sell these moribunds you just mentioned instead of the borrowings we see Nigeria doing. Are you of that opinion as well?
Yeah, but if you say then what next you do? It still amounts to looking at trying to borrow money, If you say that, are you going to reinvest the money? Those things are there. They could be easily resuscitated. They could be reactivated.
Could they be? Because it looks like some of these industries have gone so bad that it's almost like you cannot even redeem it.
Yeah, but
maybe because of sometimes the international politics and forces.
Let's not assume that. Let's do an assessment and see what is redeemable in these organizations. The infrastructure is there. You don't have to start building a new infrastructure. But I think it would be cheaper, if you really resuscitate these industries and get them running, even if it's on a skeletal level, and then you will, scale up as time goes on. But industrial base is very important. Are you going to build new industries? For example, there's some other concept, that could be very helpful to us. Instead of looking at very huge projects, we want to build Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, which we are building for the past how many years? Almost 20 years. We are building the second Niger. Those things are consuming lots of money, and it's not helping. They're not helping matters.
And they part of the infrastructural, issues that need to be fixed to attract investment and all of that.
We have borrowed so much money that we don't even see the result in terms of the infrastructure. Look at the roads. The tanker drivers wanted to go on strike because of bad roads. They can't deliver. It's subject to attack, on the highway, because some of the bad roads have become dense for criminals. So we just got to invest in industry, in production. We can't be a consumer nation and hope that things will be fine. We must produce, and produce qualitative, products that we can export and make an income in foreign exchange. So unless we're capable of doing that, whether we want to look at the refinery, for example. How much have we spent trying to fix the refineries? The corruption. Because when the money is voted, people just share the money. We have seen that in so many aspects of our lives. So I think the citizens need to really wake up and pay attention to how we, recruit our leaders, because it's very important, very, very important.
Okay, now, what is the role of collaboration in peace building? Because, for instance, in Jos, where I have a relative in Jos, it's a Hausa community.
Yes.
And when you want to visit certain places, they tell you, no, you can't go there because they're all Christians here or they're Biroms here.
Yeah.
And it's same for the other tribe as well. What is the role of collaboration, in ending such, scenarios?
Incidentally, I did a lot of work in Plateau State, working on the Plateau, conflict on the Plateau. We did a whole lot of work there, just like in Kaduna. We started working in Kaduna with the Zango Cutoff crisis in 1994, 93, about. And ever since then, we did a whole lot of work. But you see, the problem we had with these politicians, that with all the wonderful things we have done in terms of bringing people together, reconciling them, getting people to forgive one another and all that stuff, a politician who has some ambition comes in. And his ambition overrides, common good. And he makes policies and makes statements that will set the whole place on fire. Because he wants to garner support for his ambition. So most of the times the politicians are to be blamed for what's going on right now. It didn't used to be so. The ordinary Nigerians want to live together. I've been in Kaduna for several years. I witnessed a whole lot of protests and killings and what do you call them in Kaduna, crisis in Kaduna. But you find out that soon after the whole thing is over, people quickly come together and keep on working together as if nothing happened, which means that the ordinary person has nothing against each other. But the incitement by the politician, by the political class, for domination, for being in control, kind of makes these things so difficult to really deal with. So I think that, again, the process of recruitment of leaders, I think is very important. Because the way it is going right now, look at what's happening about the congresses. We were talking about internal democracy. And of course, ask some of these political parties, what is your vision for Nigeria? What do you want to see? What Nigeria do you want to see? No, they don't have ideas. Have you ever seen anyone of them talking about tomorrow? What could happen about the educational system, about the health issues? No, all they're talking about is planning on how to rig elections. I don't know whether they discuss any other thing in the political meetings other than how to rig elections, how to be on top. Nothing. So it's really a shame, that we were enjoying a huge atmosphere of peace before all this thing came in. I remember Kaduna pretty well, that people were living together until this whole thing started and Kaduna became separated. And it has become so difficult to bridge that gap, to get the Christians and Muslims living together. But why can't they live together? They can't live together. Now you're talking about collaboration. You don't build collaboration without empathy. There must be good communication. We must empathize. We must put ourselves in each other's shoes to feel the pain I'm feeling, to see the need I have. And I can tell you that most of the times we talk about bringing people together, we don't talk about their fears. What are your fears beyond your needs? What fears you have? People have a lot of fears.
Now, there's also...
We must address these fears as well.
Yes. Now, there's also another issue that has been on the front burner of recent. We have a large number of people, in thousands, who were, before belonging to the Boko Haram, coming out to say, okay, we are surrendering our arms. We are now, repented. We are not going back to that, fighting insurgency and all of that. And the government say, well, we are having an open window for those who are willing to give up their arms and, come out of this. And then on the other hand, you are having victims also who have been displaced, who feel aggrieved, by these same people. Yes. We are now having a situation where it's almost like bringing together these same people, integrating them back together, into the same communities and all of that. Some Nigerians have expressed different views, as far as that is concerned. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think it's wrong, to just give a blanket amnesty to criminals, to those who have destroyed and maimed and killed. It's wrong. Elsewhere in the world, if you do the crime, you do the time. If you commit a crime, you got to be, you got to follow the law. You punish them for what they have done. And if you want them to come back, be reintegrated into society, that's what they call victim-offender mediation, where you bring the offender to meet the victim, those who he has subjected to pain and suffering. Face them and tell them you are sorry, or apologize for what you have done, and let them reconcile. It's not the government reconciling on behalf of those who have been wounded. It's not done anywhere. And besides, Boko Haram is an ideology, and the ideologies don't die so quickly. We have seen people who have been involved in those kind of extremist activities, and they say, let's reintegrate them, and eventually they go back to what they know. Look at Afghanistan. And there's several other examples, So we cannot assume that the process we are following now to reintegrate criminals back into the society is worthwhile. It's not. I think that they should go to jail. They should be jailed, and from jail you bring them out to face those they've hurt. Because those guys in the what they call them in the rehabilitation centers, is that refugee camps? They're human beings. They've been subjected to all kinds of hurt and pain, and you can't just wish it away. So if you join this kind of thing and you did something, come and see the people you hurt. Face them, look at them in the eyes and tell them why you did it and why you shouldn't be punished. And if you have anything to say, to beg for forgiveness, because other people will forgive you, then you beg them for forgiveness. And if they say, okay, it's fine by us, that's fine. Then the government shouldn't just do it as a right because I'm government. Then I have to just...
But is that even possible in this case that we are looking at? Some of these former, I would say, ex-Boko Haram fighters, they don't even know the number of people that they've killed. It doesn't matter. So they don't even know the people that they've killed.
But you know the community where you've been killing the people. You know where you went to kill the people. You may not know who you killed and the number you killed, but you know with the community. Go and face them. That's how to build peace. That's how to build peace. Otherwise, these guys are going to be hurting for revenge, for retaliation. And if they see any slight opportunity, they can even take it out on other people. Like the guy who says the mother was kidnapped, and the sister were kidnapped. And because of that, he has joined the criminals to go and find the mother and the sister, wherever they are. And that he's even thinking of kidnapping other people so that they can see what he's going through. So, these things are very, very tricky. I can tell you something. Unless we have a deliberate policy, a deliberate plan, a proactive plan to build peace. What is peace building? Creating those conditions that are necessary for peace. Who will make it happen? All of us, the family, everybody. But most importantly, those who make the laws. Look at the utterances of the people in the National Assembly. It doesn't help matters. People come in there. Look at how much we talked about electronic voting, electronic transfer of votes. Look at the amount of energy and time we wasted talking about this, which should be a given, that we want to improve our electoral system and make it better, make it more transparent. And people are really against it. We're arguing like hell because they want to preserve their positions, and stay in the Senate. It doesn't work.
Okay.
Now, in your experience as a peace builder and a conflict resolution expert, what's the most common denominator that you have seen, that usually is the reason that sparks, these conflict situations in different parts of the country?
Well, I think most times, things border more on resources. But I think we should control the amount of the kind of information that people receive. I think it's important. Without battling with the social media,
right.
It's okay. But social media is very important as well. But you can have ways of minimizing the negative aspects of social media. So I think the kind of information that people have out there is very, very, very important. Because many people now have a perception that anybody who is not on my side, who is not like me, is an enemy. So at the slightest provocation, you take it out and you deal with the person like an enemy. Because we say the way you see the world is the way you respond to it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So we have created these enemy images. The perceptions are so bad. People have wrong attitudes and behaviors towards each other. So all those things need to change.
Okay. Now, talking about social media content, we get to see quite a lot of content that sometimes spike, ensure that some of these violent moves are taking place because of the content we see on social media.
Yes.
Are you for the federal government's move to regulate social media?
Well, I think that requires a lot of collaboration with the service providers, those who control the social media. because you look at the pros and cons. A lot of people, their livelihoods depend on the social media. You know, and on the other side, and then you have this kind of negative impact you're talking about. So if there are issues that would raise hell, you know, bring down hell, you know, I think several countries have ways of dealing directly with the owners of these social media, platforms, you know, and discuss with them on how to regulate the kind of things that come to your country or whatever, you know. But you cannot stop people from you can't stop the freedom of information and the freedom of knowledge and people looking for, you know, communication and all that. You can't gag people. But we must find a way to tweak what kind of information that are received and so on and so forth. Even people who make televisions and provide all they make provisions for making it possible for young people to watch certain programs on TV. Yes. You know, you don't have to begin to tell the child, don't watch this, but they make it that you can't go there, you know. So some of those kind of preemptive actions, you know, need to be done so that people don't have access to certain areas of information that could be hurting. But that doesn't mean you should clamp down like they clamp down on Twitter and so on and so forth, and everybody's at a loss on why that should happen, you know. There should be some other ways of doing that regulation, so we don't shut out people's means of livelihood completely.
Okay. Let's go on a quick break. We are discussing peace building and conflict resolution. After this quick timeout, the discussion continues. Stay with us.
All right, thank you for staying with us. And if you're just joining, you're watching Daybreak on Trust Television, reaching you from the nation's capital in Abuja. And we have in the studio Sami Ihejirika, Executive Director, Strategic Empowerment and Mediation Agency, in the studio talking about conflict resolution mechanisms in Nigeria. Now, while we talk about building peace and conflict resolution, another thing of concern is the proliferation of firearms. You have large number of people in possession of firearms, unauthorized people, people who have no business carrying arms, having these arms in Nigeria. How do we build peace in such a scenario? Is it possible to mop up these arms and, with the level at which we are, right now?
Well, first of all, let us ask ourselves, why are people looking for arms? And how do they get these arms? How do the arms come in the first place? We saw at the beginning, when was that, in 2015 or 2014, how lots of ammunition, uniforms were being passed through the border, custom border. They come in large numbers. Apparently people were scared or better prepared that maybe the elections will end up in a fight. So there are reasons why people look for arms. One, to protect themselves, and the other to find what to eat, and so on and so forth. But the point is, if you make it difficult, if you make it that carrying arms is not necessary, then nobody will carry arms. People carry arms because it is necessary to carry arms.
Is it necessary?
Well, yeah, because if you have to protect yourself, you've got to look for arms. You've got to look for the gun.
Doesn't this signal that people have lost confidence, in the government protecting them?
Well, the government is not protecting anybody anymore because you know that the primary objective of the government is to protect for protection and welfare of citizens. And when that is lost, people resort to self-help. Nobody wants to sit down in his home and then just get killed, by any road gun-trotting guy, So people try to get arms. And again, if the economy is good, people are employed, people are, engaged, gainfully engaged. You don't have time for all this kind of stuff. So it signifies a total breakdown in the system. So how do you mop up the arms? Create jobs. Do the right thing. And people will forget about their guns and look for better things to do.
Okay.
Improve education. Make it exciting. Change the style of education, because the way it is now, it's not useful. People forge papers, forge exams and pass, and they don't know what it's all about and all that. Change all that. And it can be done, if you have the right to do it. Yeah.
You earlier mentioned that the family is an important agent, to peace building.
Yes.
Do you think Nigerian parents, have the right tools to actually teach their children what peace building
means?
Yes,
they may not have the right tools, but they can acquire the tools. They can acquire the tools. As a matter of fact, this family is the first society for the child. So it's what the child learns in the family that it takes out to the community and then to the larger society. So if you see bad leaders, they're made at home. So we've done a lot of research on this. That's what they call the evil tree, or the conflict tree. Where you see a normal tree growing, and then you see the stem, you see the branches, and then you see the roots way into the ground. So most of the time, we brew. What happens is mixed up in the nutrients that the tree gets from the soil, and it's those nutrients that go up and maybe get properly better refined in the stem and then taken to the leaves, for the leaves to blossom and so on and so forth. So this represents also the way the life is, the way our system is organized.
But don't other agents, of socialization contribute to this?
No, they do, but the first place is a home. Okay. The first place is a home. Because at that point, kids are very photographic. Their memories of photographic. You might think they're not following what's going on, but they're following. I remember a kid, who had lots of knives, in the house. And then people asked him why he has lots of knives. He said he saw his father and mother throw knives at each other.
Terrible.
And at some point that he was even killed because they missed him while they were throwing the knives. So for him, he feels that the way of life is to have knives and throw knives. So he's used to throwing knives, So if you grow up in a home where there's no love, where there's no democracy, where the children are not heard or listened to, it's a problem for the larger society. If you have a family where parents are never there, everybody's waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning and storming out and coming back at 10 at night, no time for the kids, and in between, the kids do whatever thing they like. And most times we've hired nannies who do all kinds of things with the children, you know. And it's not helping the society. Elsewhere around the world, people pay so much attention to family and early childhood education, which you're talking about. You know, in the kindergarten schools, those who teach in the kindergarten schools are PhD holders. You must be well qualified to have access to those children at that level, not just anybody. So there are deliberate efforts. Look around the world. Which are the happiest societies in the world? Scandinavian countries, Finland, Norway. What did they do? They have very good policies on family. They have friendly.
How important is culture in this conversation? Because one thing that influences people's behavior, of course, is culture.
Yes.
And this culture also determines how families are run.
Yes.
You know, particularly in this African setting.
Yes.
You know that we are in.
But every culture has some element of value.
Yes. So
cultural values.
What do we need to do? What are the things that we are to look out for? You know, in this cultures that, you know, either helps in building, you know, responsible children and vice versa.
Yeah, we need to go back and look at those things that made the family cohesive and good in those days, you know. Some of them may have been outdated by now because of, you know, developments in technology and all that, but we're always adapting. If you watch what is going on around the world, you know, the education of children has gone so, you know, technical. It has gone so, what do you call it?
Digital.
Digital, yes. Digital. School, house. It's gone so digital. So you must find a way to engage children in a very productive and helpful manner. You must find a way to do it. We had good family values in those days, where it's not just the parent alone who takes care of the child, that the entire community takes care of the child. You know, somebody can discipline your child for you and so on. But all that has changed.
We don't have that now anymore.
You can't do that now. But how do we overcome those kind of problems? These are conversations we should be having. It's not one man's idea. I have lots of ideas, but I think we need to exchange these ideas with a whole lot of other people so that we can come to some agreement. Even though here in Nigeria we find it difficult to have a common agreement on what is true and what is not true, you know. So, but how we can come out, even if there are some cultural deviations, you know, cultural variations. Yeah, each culture can look at their best practices, you know, what really had worked for us. How can we modify this, or, you know, in the light of current developments in the world, you know. So it has to be a very deliberate. Yes. I keep on mentioning deliberate effort. If you don't pay attention
but you know, for the most part, what you are saying applies to maybe an ideal family where you have, like, okay, yes, it's ideal. You have the father, you have the mother, and all of that. We have a lot of broken families.
Of course. Why are the families? Why are the families broken?
And mostly, maybe as a result of poverty, you find that children grow up in a family where they don't even listen to their parents. Children grow up in a position where they have to fend for themselves, you know, and all of that.
See,
how is it possible to do this?
This is a cycle. Bad parents bring up bad children, and those bad children become parents, and they bring up, and it goes on. So you have to break the cycle somewhere. And I think this is a point at which you can break that cycle, that we don't have to let it replicate itself over time and become a norm. You were talking about culture. Don't forget that you can build a new culture. We have a culture of corruption in Nigeria right now. We have the culture of impunity. They didn't used to exist. So every day we create new cultures. We have the culture of affluence now, that you measure how successful you are by the kind of car or whatever you show, no matter how you get it. You know, all these are cultures. We create new cultures every day. So cultures change, you know, they vary. But if you talk about tradition, yes, but then something is a tradition doesn't mean it's correct. You know, time changes everything. So we need to begin to look at some of this. If you talk about size of family, things that happen, people need to think again. Do you really need to marry 4 wives? Do you need to have 37 children that you can look after? Do you need to send your child to a place that you cannot look after that child? Do you have to have children you cannot look after? Do you care about your kids going to school? Look at what's happening with the Amajori system. We have leaders who have so much money, affluence, and all that. sending their children to schools abroad and are building big homes. And they have children who line up in front of their homes with plates waiting for just pittance. And they don't show any empathy about that. They just look at them and go, what kind of people are these? And what kind of society are you trying to build? You got to be human, for Christ's sake. You know? You got to be human. Our problems begin in the family. They begin in the family. We must pay attention to homes and how parenting is done. The skills may not be right now, but we can improve on the skills. We can work on it. It can be done. It's not something you postpone for tomorrow, because if you postpone it, it's just like kicking the empty can down the road. You know, you see, the problem is still waiting for you down there. Right. So it's better you start now. Now, what you do, apart from having parents to look after their children, you also need to work on the parents. Because most of the parents themselves are maladjusted. And they came from maladjusted homes. Talking about divorce and broken homes. What is the problem? Economy, deceit, you know, bad information. You know, people don't come out to know exactly who they are, you know, getting involved with until maybe they will knee deep into it, and then they begin to regret. There are all kinds of social services that can be provided to support the family and to support those who want to engage. You know, but our attention and priorities are so different right now. You know, I work as an NGO. Here you find that most NGOs are like leaves on the tree. You know, where the wind blows, and there's money out there. Everybody gets in there, so that we leave so many things undone, unfinished. You know, so I think that first of all there has to be that will, you know, that will to do it. There has to be the passion.
Is there any project that, for instance, your NGO is working on, you know, that has to do with this, you know, family and all of that?
Yes. You know, I used to live in Kaduna. I relocated to Abuja late 2019, and then COVID came 2020 last year, and then 2021. We are trying to do more of what we call the strategic interventions, you know. For example, the family issue. We are working with the Women Affairs, Ministry of Women Affairs, to see how we can use that platform, you know, to move this issue, you know, move this forward. Again, you find out that most times, you know, the government people don't have money. You know, they tell you, oh, we don't have money to do it. But it's important to do it. So how can we? We must find money to do it. I think everybody is affected one way or the other by bad parenting, by the if you know, aftermath of bad.
Well, what's the plan of the project, and what's the goal of the project that you're proposing?
The goal is to reform the country from the family
level. From the family level.
Yes, from the family, transforming Nigeria from the family.
Okay, now you earlier mentioned the culture of corruption.
Yeah.
You know, does corruption have a role to play, you know, in pulling down the fight, you know, the peace-building agenda?
Of course it does. Of course it does. What is corruption after all, you know? There are different levels of corruption, different types of corruption. Influence peddling is corruption. Nepotism is corruption, you know, and so on and so forth. It's not only when you receive money. There are other elements of corruption that you bring to bear in the work we do. There are silent discriminations that go on in every business, particularly here that I told you, you know, the perception is so bad, you know, that people have enemy images. Once they see your name, you know, they immediately have a mindset on how to engage you and so on and so forth. We shouldn't be, you know, we should be looking out for talent, we should be looking out for ability, competence, you know, if we are going to turn things around. Everybody in this country has something that you can offer the country. Right. We all don't have to go to university or be graduates or whatever, you know, everybody, that you have to lower standards lower, everybody can, it can't work, it cannot work. People are talented, people have work. So how do you help people to realize their potentials, their talents, you know? If you don't create that enabling environment, that atmosphere that can empower everybody, you know, to be who you want to be. So we have all kinds of people in this country, and that is a blessing. Somebody was, you know, trying to debunk some of the ideas we have about Nigeria. That Nigeria, one out of every 5 Africans is a Nigerian. Of what benefit is that to us? Has it brought any benefit to Nigeria? That Nigeria is the largest economy. What benefit has it brought to us? Nothing. So some of these notions we have, you know, bloated notions about ourselves should be removed. Let us be humble and live within what we have and how we can manage what we have and produce. And that even takes us to the issue of borrowing. It's not healthy for now and the future, particularly when we know we don't have the resources. You can't generate enough resources to back up that borrowing.
Exactly one of the issues that I wanted to raise earlier on. But, you know, we talk about the need to revitalize some of the industries that are moribund in Nigeria. That way we'll create employment and all of that. But how can government do that when it lacks revenue, it lacks money to do so? And so it says, well, the best thing to do is to borrow and, you know, invest in these things.
If you borrow and invest in things that would be profitable, that is fine. For example, let me give you an example of the way I look at development. Our development ideas have been top-bottom approach to development. So can we reverse it and begin to think of bottom-top approach? Let us go to the rural areas, build all the rural areas, pay for all the rural roads, put electricity in the rural areas, put light water in the rural areas. Look, development follows roads. The moment you build the rural areas, which can be done, it can be done. There are strategies for doing it.
Without borrowing?
If you borrow, you put it into such things because the dividend will come very quickly. But even at the amount of money you have now that are stolen, which if you plug up the gaps, you can recoup those monies. Every local government can be empowered to build rural roads. If you have good rural roads, people don't need to live in the city to go to work. If your home is close to the city, you go to work from your home. And that brings development. Cars will be on the road. Mechanic will follow. Food sellers will follow. Petrol sellers will follow. Transporters will follow. All kinds of things will happen. Crime in the cities will go down. Rural-urban migration will go down. You could decongest the cities. Things will work a lot better. So if you're in your home now, you can live in your home and deal with anybody around the world. You don't need to be in the city. Movement is now going from city centers to the rural areas, elsewhere. So we need to pay attention to some of these little details that we can go back and see how we can build our communities. Because the communities can produce, they can farm, they can do. If every local government has one cottage industry or two cottage industries in Nigeria, two, based on the natural resources you have there, tell me what will be the multiplier effect on employment and development around the country? Huge. The amount of money we spent on the Ibadan Expressway would have done this for so many local governments. I'm not saying that those shouldn't be built, but you know, there's a lot of corruption going on out there as well. You know, that the thing can be finished. Even in 2 years, it cannot be finished. So if we pay attention to changing the narrative of now building from the bottom up, where you look at the communities, how do we strengthen the communities? How do we make the cities safer? How do we prevent rural-urban migration? You know. So you said if people will build schools, people who live in the cities are now living in their homes, they will think of how to educate their children. They will build schools. Health centers will come. You can set up anything, any kind of business, you know, because you have internet access, you have all kinds of stuff. So I mean,
do you also subscribe to the idea that government is spending too much on running governance?
Of course, yes.
You know,
there's no question about that.
And all of that.
That's why they're killing themselves.
How do we bring it down?
That's why they're killing. And you don't expect these guys where they are now to change that law. They will do everything to make sure that this amount of money they're receiving and what they're getting is okay. Now, government can cut down. We can cut down the cost of governance. First of all, let us even plug the loopholes for money being stolen. The amount of money being stolen, but in fact, the ministries are even the worst. Nobody's talking about them. We are talking about the big guys who carry billions of naira. Go to the ministries, look at the budget they have every year. See go through the budget lines and you see corruption. You know, so you can plug up that, and then we must change our political system. That is, in terms of people who want to lead. Leadership is all about service. It's not about being served. It's about service. So we need to find people who are willing to serve. We don't need to pay house allowance, buy house.
With the kind of political structure that we have, how do you even identify the people who are willing to serve? Because it seems like everything is monetized right now.
Yeah.
And so if you do not have money, it's like just when you have the money, you have your way.
Yeah.
You know, so, and it's like if you don't have the money, you are nobody, no matter what ideas you have, no matter how credible you are.
But you see, that is the point, you know, that at some point we have to change the narrative. Has this system worked? Has it been of any benefit to all of us? Has it been for public good? No. I mean, let us do some self evaluation, some critical thinking. If something has not helped us and it has not worked, why would us make effort to have it reversed? The ordinary citizens can. We were talking about how we select our leaders, the elections, which is where to start. Instead of going to be carrying arms and going to the streets and killing people, we can use our elections to transform the society. In every community, we know those who are honest. We know those who work. That is why when they were talking about direct primaries, there are some pros and cons to direct primaries. If you have direct primaries, anybody can jump into the race. All you need to do is to work hard and have people who will support you, right? People who share the same ideas with you. And they will come and back you up. You put your paper, you go in. So it's not a question of people selecting or using their power or using impunity to impose people on other people and all this issue of lack of internal democracy in parties, you know. But every party should have membership card. If you're a member, you pay dues for the party. So it's the party, the money you pay that the party is used to be, you know, that they used to run the party and so on and so forth. It doesn't have to be the big guys bringing the money. So somehow this narrative has to be changed. It has to be changed. And it starts from the elections, for example. That people need to now begin to, in fact, there are what we call local palavers, you know, that is isolated palavers. That is where you begin from the words to select people. For example, if you say, we are going to build a road on self-help in this community today, we don't have government money, but we'll make an announcement. We are going to build this road in this community. Anybody who is interested in helping build this road should come to a meeting. Don't invite anybody special about this. If the emir, the chief, or whoever thinks he wants to serve, come here. And we believe that those who show up are those who have the passion and the will to do it. So if you don't make special invitation, give people the honor that they don't deserve, people who have, you know, not helped the society, and you keep on recycling them and making them feel important when they are not really important in our lives, you know, they have not helped us. It doesn't work. Make an announcement. We are going to do this. Anybody who feels concerned and committed to be part of this, please show up.
There's this other issue that, you know, in the political arena is almost as if people who are credible enough feel like, well, politics is dirty. I'm not going to engage. I'm not going to be involved with this because I can't see myself going through the, you know, the stress, you know, the way the process is and all of that. And we have quite a number of them. People who can make informed decisions, you know, distancing themselves from, you know, the political arena in its entirety. What do you say to such people?
Well, if the atmosphere is very toxic, there's no need getting involved. I mean, if you know that you're going to get hot, you don't need to get involved.
So how do you make the change? How do you, because we need such people to
It's
make
through this
the
kind of
change.
policies we are making in the National Assembly, and that those policies will be signed into law, and that they will be, you know, enforced. Because if we do those things, and we have people who can go to the House and argue for these things, and then you pass the laws, because you need like-minded people who can go into the. You don't have to be a single guy making the difference, but you can make the difference in your own way, in the sense that you can convince other people. You can great ideas begin from one individual or a couple of individuals. You know, change begins with the individual, not a. So somebody or some people need to get involved and get, you know, people of like minds. Let them get into the House and debate and make laws, you know, that will be people friendly. That can help to change all this. We're not saying that people shouldn't have money or that you shouldn't support people, but don't buy that position that you cannot handle, that you cannot run. Because we've seen people get into office and then the office they're overwhelmed by the demands of the office. They can't even run the system. But they've been struggling so hard to be there and they cannot do it. So somehow the selection process has to be tweaked. I don't know how we're going to do it, but at least we have started.
Okay.
with the electronic voting and the electronic transmission of results and so on and so forth. And many people are agitated, many people are concerned that we're not getting the best out of our effort and our involvement in all this.
Okay. Now, you earlier mentioned that Nigeria is not investing enough, in peace building.
Yes.
Is this because Nigeria does not take peace building as a priority?
Yes, they take it for granted. And like I said, we are not proactive. We don't do anything until things get so bad. Then you see us running from pillar to post, like a fire brigade and so trying to put it out. But this have to be very deliberate, like I said. What I'm telling you about the family and how to build a family is part of peace building. You are being proactive. You are looking into the future. You are addressing some definite issues. The judiciary, can they do something different? Yeah, it's all part of peace building. Can we respond to early warning systems? Any warning when we see something, we respond to it. Can we do that? So it doesn't have to be one huge effort. It can be pockets of efforts in different sectors of the society. Everybody contributing. Is it in teaching? Is it in performing arts? You can use your music, to build peace, and so on and so forth. So it's an effort that requires everybody, contributing something in their own various levels. But again, there has to be a general policy whereby the government can say, listen, peace is our goal. It's even in our national anthem and so on and so forth. It's our goal. And then we are making every effort. I was discussing with some guys in terms of the bills that are made in the House of Assembly. Do they ever think about these bills before they come out? That is the people who put out bills out there for debate or whatever. Do they ever go through it properly? Do they do some scenario building to think about the cost and consequences of some of the things they want to do and how it's going to impact on the society and so on and so forth? It is not done. So legislation on its own also has its own skills, its own, ideology or the way it looks at everything. So that you got to begin their mainstream peace building within the legislative system. So that whatever they do, they are looking at, is it people friendly? Is it peace friendly? Will it generate peace? Or will it be cantankerous? So in every sphere, the leadership itself has to show example. It's also part of the peace building. That when you live by example and what you say yes, it means yes. Everybody. Can you ask a typical Nigerian child now, who is your idol? Who is your political idol? Who is your role model? Please, you guys who are the media, can you go around and ask Nigerian children?
That's quite difficult.
Who is your role model and see if they have, if there's any role model at all. This is part of the problem. That people need to begin to lead by example.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. We've been speaking with Sammy Ihejirika. He is the Executive Director, Strategic Empowerment and Mediation Agency, SEMA. Thank you for coming. We look forward to having you again.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yes. All right, talking about peace building in the country, talking about new approaches on conflict resolution and mechanisms. It's a duty for all of us, just like our guest has said. It's something that we all must play our part, to ensure that there's peace via our utterances, our engagements, interpersonal, our actions, our communication and all of that. These are things that influence our relationship as a nation. And so we want to see more of national cohesion and unity.
We'll also want to see, the government prioritizing peace building, as a mechanism as well.
Yes, truly, because I think government has a chunk of the responsibility of bringing the citizens together. Well, we'll take now a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll round up the show. Please stay with us.
Nice to see you, sir. You got a 10-year-old son, a 12-year-old son. He's a shill boy. Yeah. And how did he get to that stage? You allowed it to happen. You allowed it to fester. It's like a cancer.
It's a failure of the family, a failure of the society, and a failure of governance.
we are still going into some other hideouts to see if any apprehensions will be made tonight.
To operate within the context of the law with much respect to human rights.
Suleiman, Aya, and Tari, all from the Sulubawa clan, with a unique wealth of culture and deep love for cattle, which truly reflects their sense of family. But over time, everything changes with no lands for grazing. Experience the incredible story of the Fulani people. Loved ones they must protect. The journey they must take.
This is the spot, a marking signifying the starting point of the dam.
No, Chobri. No, Sare. 40. No compensation has been given to any community member, and no place has been earmarked for their relocation.
Since why they go, they never come back.
And this is where the hydroelectric power dam is supposed to be constructed. But for many years, the story has remained the same. This is the site of the proposed hydroelectric power station in Mambila. But the irony is, no construction has even commenced yet.
All right, welcome back. You are still watching Daybreak on Trust Television. Right about now, we're going to take a look at sports in 60.
Hello, welcome to Trust Sports in 60 seconds. The president of Cycling Federation of Nigeria, Domenico Masari, has said that Team Nigeria's iron laurels will be difficult for the country to win medals at the 111th World Track Cycling Championship. Masari said it was a big achievement for Nigeria, which started competing in track cycling 2 years ago to qualify for the World Track Cycling Championship. Announcing the CAF Champions League, Al Ahly coach Peter Musimani says African football chiefs must prioritize introducing VAR after the CAF Champions League title holders drew 1-1 at Gendarmerie Nationale of Niger. He says if there are no VAR in matches, Africa will continue to see the situation. And finally, Real Madrid and Rivers State government have signed a cooperation ratification agreement for promotion of sport among children and youths at Real Madrid Academy for Tacket. The agreement was signed over the weekend at the auditorium of Real Madrid Sports City. And that's all the top headlines on Trust Sports in 60 seconds. Don't forget to subscribe, like and follow us across all social media platforms.
All right, thank you for staying with us. There you have it, Sports in 60 seconds. It's been Daybreak on Trust Television, reaching you from the nation's capital. And In case you've missed, then you can catch up on our social media handles and also subscribe to our YouTube channel for latest news updates. The show has been very, very insightful and very, very interesting.
Quite interesting.
Talking about peace building. Peace building is something that we all have to do, and it touches virtually on every aspect of our daily lives as Nigerians. So whether you're a politician, whether you're a professional, a lawyer, a doctor, whatever it is that you are doing, there is an aspect of peace building to what you're doing, which is in your communication and in some of the messages that we send, how we relate with one another as countrymen. So it's very important that we do all of that to achieve peace. Thank you so much for watching the show today with us. Hope that you join us again tomorrow for another time on the show. My name is Ayuba Ilya.
And I'm Zainab Bala. Most importantly, the government should prioritize peace building in Nigeria. Thank you so much for staying with us.